I like the one both parties like, referring to one state or two state solutions. He also said later, I can live with either one. Once again, two possibilities. What exactly does he mean? Does he mean two state solutions, US support? Or does he mean, let's just get away from the two states? One state was fine with me, as long as the Israelis like.
Well, good morning, and I think the way you've described it is making it very clear. It's a very meandering, incoherent position. There's no firmness to it, and it leaves those actors who are responsible for this issue in Israel and in Palestinian areas, even the career diplomats at the State Department and elsewhere, confused. Right now there's no vision and there's no team for this, and it's a very dangerous situation because it upends a certainty of a goal, not a certainty of a peace process and how to actually achieve it, but at least this goal, and it further isolates the U.S. from our partners and allies across the world and in the Arab world as well, which is a danger to our national security.
I see. Mr. Javedanfar, coming from Israel, let me ask you about this. If the two-state solution is being pushed into the dustbin, what kind of floodgate are we opening now for kinds of options that both parties could do in the very near future?
Well, I think there are a number of options. One of them is annexation, more annexation of Palestinian land, which is what Naftali Bennett, one of the partners in the current coalition government of Prime Minister Netanyahu, calling for. The other options from the Palestinian side is a major boycott divestment campaign being launched against Israel in the international community, especially in Europe. That could be a counter-Palestinian move by the Palestinians in order to force Israel to accept their demands. Or last but not least, a one-state solution where the Palestinians and Israelis live together in one state, where that would mean the end of Israel as a Jewish democratic state, a Jewish and democratic state, because in such a state there will be more Palestinian Muslims than Jews, and therefore it will be basically the end of Israel. So this is one of the reasons why the advocates for the two-state solution in Israel are concerned about the lack of direction and commitment from Washington for the two-state solution.
And Ms. He, what does this mean for the United States? I mean, after all, it used to be playing the role of a go-betweener between the Palestinians and the Israelis. And now if it subscribes to the option, or rather the preference of the politicians of one party, it seems it could lose its credibility with the other party, if not more. So is it smart if the US is taking side?
Well, it's not smart at all. I think before, the United States has been long, building itself as an image, as a bridge builder. So it has been long for all those presidents in the United States. If they could even have a photo together, like with Palestinian leadership and the Israeli leadership, and then that will
part of
prove,
legacy already.
that will be proof this is a very successful president in terms of handling those Middle East issues. But now with this Trump's policy, even he is challenging this two-state solution. That solution has been long, abided by the international players. So which means this is an upside-down statement, upside-down policy. So I think it will lose completely those confidence and support and trust coming from Palestinian side.
Not only from the Palestinian side, but also probably from the international community, because the United Nations also supports the two-state solution at the end, at least, of the Obama administration. If you look at the U.S. presidency over the past few decades, you will notice the Middle East peace process will always be an important part of the centerpiece of one president's achievements. If you take a look at this, Bill Clinton was the first president to endorse a two-state solution, saying in a speech January 2001, just 2 weeks before leaving office, and the conflict would never be settled without a sovereign, viable Palestinian state. That's the suggestion of two-state solution. His successor, George W. Bush, picked that up later that year, becoming the first president to make it official American policy. Official American policy. Mr. President Obama later considered a two-state solution the unquestionable redlock of Washington's approach to the region. You could hear the rhetoric is becoming ever stronger. Of course, Mr. Rubin, this
Can
president...
I just add a point here?
May I just ask Mr. Rubin, and then I'll come back to you, certainly, Mr. Javedanfar. Mr. Rubin, this president is well known for scrapping off whatever his predecessor was doing. But when it comes to foreign relations issue like this, where does it put the United States, particularly its relations, let's just say, with Iran, with other parts of the Middle East, Jordan, some of the other allies as well, and also the U.S. in terms of its position at the UN Security Council? Mr.
Well, what this is in many ways it's consistent with what we've seen from President Trump so far, a willingness to throw out, in a sense, the previous views of American national, the consensus of American national security. Maybe it's a view of the lesser importance of NATO, or of upending relations with Mexico, or of not committing to a one China policy initially. And then the president seems to come back again, and it's very unclear about where they're heading. My fear is that this creates a leadership vacuum for the United States in the Middle East. Now, the two-state solution wasn't just dreamed up out of thin air. It's because it's a pragmatic way forward to ensure that both of the parties, the Israelis and the Palestinians, get something tangible that they need for their long-term security and identity. And to just dismiss that for some ploy, potential throwing out the previous views can be very damaging to our standing in the region.
Mr. Javedanfar, obviously you could have your time to speak. Please, sir.
Thank you very much. I think, well, number one, I don't think from the onset President Trump seemed like somebody who would support the Palestinian position. But I think there's another reason why he seems kind of nonchalant and non-committal to this idea. One of his principles of the art of the deal is that you shouldn't look too desperate to make the deal, because once the other party realizes that you're very desperate to get that deal, then they will take advantage of you. That will weaken your bargaining position. And I think it is possible also in this case, Trump has learned from his predecessors that making Middle East peace is extremely difficult. So if he overcommits himself from the get-go, that could actually reduce his leverage. So now he's by seemingly being nonchalant, I think he's passing the buck to the participants in the Middle East, thus making his position stronger by being seen as being more non-committal, just as he advises other people in his book when it comes to making a deal.
Well, very interesting you put it that way. You seem to be more understanding than what the president was thinking. But anyway, Mr. Rubin, you want to respond to that?
Well, that's playing with fire, and what we've seen over the past decades is that from an Israeli policy perspective, there's not been a rush to withhold settlement construction, for example, and move into a bilateral negotiation with the Palestinians. And the same can be said about the Palestinians. So allowing the parties to just go at it themselves has not produced results as well. And it really does set a situation up where no direction from the United States, no engagement, could be very dangerous and empower those who really do not want to see a solution to this amongst the Israelis and the Palestinians.
Mr. Javedanfar, if you are that understanding to the U.S. president's position, may I ask you two things? One is, what about his call for take it easy, not too many settlements yet? He was telling his Israeli counterpart about further settlements built by the Israelis, and also his suggestion about Israel having further diplomatic relations with Saudi Arabia. So if Israel is very understanding, probably you're going to follow suit about the advice coming from the U.S. president.
Well, the way President Trump said, would you mind not kind of, I'm paraphrasing, of course, don't build too many settlements, and Netanyahu said, I'll try. When Netanyahu, Prime Minister, said, I'll try, the translation is forget about it, the real translation. It's not going to happen. Prime Minister Netanyahu needs to expand settlements. He's under pressure at home. There are 2 police investigations open against him.
That's right.
That puts him in a precarious position with more right-wing elements of his party. They know that they have him in a sensitive position, so he has to keep building. The stability of his government is at stake. And also the question of making peace with the Saudis. This is nothing new. This has been around since 2003. But one of the chief elements of the Saudi plan is for Israel to stop building settlements so that there's a viable Palestinian state.
Right.
When Prime Minister Netanyahu wants to have, he's not going to have both of it. He's not going to have peace with the Saudis while he's building settlements. Just completely unrealistic.
Okay, Ms. He, before we go, final question for you. As an observer from afar, what would the change of position, at least under this administration in the U.S., 2-state solution to now 1 state or whatever you guys want to have its impact on the overall Middle East? It's not just Israeli-Palestinians, we all understand that. There's also the Israel of Iran, there's also Saudi and the other parts of the Arab world. And there's Iraq, there is Syria, there are many hotspots as well. How much will this further stir the already chaotic situation?
Yeah, all those countries you mentioned now has paid close watch about this talk between the President Trump and the Netanyahu. So it's just like throw a stone in a pond, and then you will see a lot of waves has been generated,
Ripple
of course. So I can see now the consensus about Iran, the nuclear deal. Now they reached the consensus between the 2, Trump and the Netanyahu. They both say this is not a good deal, and then they will pay a great, those awareness for the Iran's so-called nuclear attempt. But for the 1 state or 2 state, now even Trump hasn't made it very clear. He just trying to make a test to challenge, to touch that, how can I say, this is bottom of the night to see what kind of a generation, what kind of a response is coming from all those players. But now I think he has touched that. It's just like a time bombing thing. So all those countries, even United Nations will also call, say this is untouchable. So he will know. And the whole of this process, I think President Trump is in the process of learning, knowledge learning.